one of the things that I would emphasize about our missions is that they're very interactive. Whether we're talking about research, which spans from very fundamental discoveries down to very translational things that actually are very closely related to real-world problems. We're constantly interacting with others, with our scientific peers, but also with all of you who represent the industries that make Ohio strong, the consumer needs in Ohio, and the like. In our teaching mission, we often say teaching. Those of you who've heard me speak before understand that when I say teaching, I mean both resident instruction and our outreach education through extension. The fact is, teaching is an abbreviation itself. It's teaching and learning. You know, it's one thing to teach, but the impact is the learning opportunity. And I would just remind everyone that learning is a reciprocal thing. It's not just our students who learn. If we're smart teachers, we learn constantly in that teaching opportunity. And so we could talk about an awful lot of things that have changed. I could talk about the fact that we've just been through a very successful Ohio budget cycle. The state legislature and Ohio's administration increased our funding lines this year for the upcoming biennium. We're very grateful for that. It puts us in a strong position as we look to move forward. We've seen over the past year almost a dizzying array of structural changes, and I would refer those of you who are outside the college and maybe have been paying a little less attention to go back to our website and look for my June presentation to the college, where I outlined a lot of the things that have changed structurally within the college. We've tackled our fiscal system, our HR system, our IT system, equity and inclusion. Over the past year, we had a record year in philanthropy with about $24.7 million coming in the door to support our programs. That comes on the back of the previous year, which was the record before that. And as we look to finish out our But for Ohio State campaign of $2.5 billion here at the university, our team is looking to finish strong to really help our programs grow. Now, I've presented a number of times over the past couple of years. I can't believe this is almost year 3. Been through my third Farm Science Review at the helm, the third new set of students coming on since I returned to Ohio State. Time has flown by, and it's been great to reconnect with a lot of you and to meet so many new friends and to understand the great support that our college has here. You've heard me talk over these past couple of years about the need for a lot of planning exercises. You know, I've got several of them listed here. These are the higher profile things that we've talked about. But the end game here is that the purpose of this planning is to really not only involve our faculty, staff, and students, but to engage them in our own success. We know that we have to grow. Those of you who are business owners, look back over your shoulder. Your business is different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That's exactly the paradigm that we face in higher education. We have to change to stay current, to stay ahead of the curve. And that requires good planning, but planning can only be facilitated from the top. It can't be conducted from the top. It has to be done from the ground floor. And so what you see here as 5 simple bullet points is actually a huge suite of faculty and staff, and in many cases our students who've engaged in talking about where we are, where we want to go, and what the trajectory is for us to get there. Let's start with facilities considerations. If you have not been over to Ag Administration, you need to go. We have completely renovated the college's library system. We now call it the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences Library and Student Success Center, because the library of today is different than the library that you and I faced when we were back here in college. Now, we've got some of our 1965 grads back this weekend celebrating their 50th anniversary of their graduation from the college in Ohio State. I can tell you that as a 1976 grad, when I returned in 2012, and went into the library and found that issue of the Canadian Entomologist with the dog ears on the pages exactly where I left them when I finished my honors project, I knew something needed to change. Enter Linda Martin and her team. Linda is known across campus as one of the most student-centered administrators that we have at Ohio State. And she and her folks had been planning for several years to see the renovation of this library space. We opened it in February. The librarians tell us that use of that space doubled immediately. Students still have access to all of the arcane journals. If I wanted that dog-eared version or issue of the Canadian Entomologist, I'm sure they could get it for me, and I'm sure the dog ears would still be there because I didn't bend them back when I looked at it 3 years ago. The fact is that libraries have become a space for community, a space for collective learning. We have a set of rooms in this library that we use for interviews, including mock interview resume evaluations that we do through our Employer on Campus program that we've implemented recently, where companies come in and basically informally work with students who have an interest in the sector. The students can learn more about what those companies are doing, but the companies actually get a sneak preview of students. Even in an informal setting, students, you need to be on your guard to actually be able to carry yourself well. This $5 million project has been a game changer for our college and for the university. People across campus, as they drive down Woody Hayes, have noted this and commented that we've made a change. We've been interviewing for a new chief librarian at the university, and I've been in a couple of those interviews in the past week. And each of the candidates has pointed out to me when I've introduced myself that they have been told by people from across campus they want to do what we did. And so this is really seen as an incredible investment. You may not recognize this place. I should have set this up as a poll with clickers maybe so you could choose where you think this is. For those of you who know the Midwest campus here, this is the lobby of Cottman Hall. You may not recognize it because there are no students huddled in winter coats. It's got some light to it. The walls are clean. There's a flat panel screen on the wall. Those are the recollections of Cottman Hall that I rediscovered a few years ago. And so as we went through a building project to renovate Cottman Hall, I noticed on one of my first tours the duct tape being used for weather stripping around the windows on the upper floors. And so we brought the chief of facilities and planning from Ohio State over for a little tour and just stood there and idly peeled off some of that duct tape while he was standing in the hall and positioned him right by the hole in the drywall where the air from outside was blowing in at about 80 miles an hour. He got the message and leveraged our $2 million investment with an additional $12 million from the university, and we've completely renovated that building. We're hopeful as we go into the winter season that we'll no longer get reports of Coca-Cola freezing in glasses on faculty members' desks. But the fact is that as we finished the roofing, the windows, the HVAC system, there was funding still available, and Ron Hendrick, along with our academic leaders that are headquartered in Cottman, made it a point to reinvest that extra money back into the student space in Cottman Hall. So that, you know, as our students gather, they've now got a great library space to work in. They've got a great place to wait between classes. There actually are even electrical outlets, so they can plug in their stuff between classes. You know, it's just such an epiphany. So here on the Columbus campus, we've had nearly, over the past year, the culmination of $20 million in facility renovations that have really changed the face of what we're doing. Up on our Worcester campus, a lot of great stuff going on as well. Now, my colleague Steve Slack has said this a number of times, and some of you may have heard it. These are words to live by. A tornado is no way to do facilities planning. 5 years ago, the Worcester campus was hit by a tornado. Very fortunately, there were no injuries to people, but there was extraordinary damage to the facilities. And so it's a long process to recover from those sorts of things, and we're happy to report that the Agricultural Engineering Building has been opened this past year. It is a forward-looking building. If you have a chance to visit the Worcester campus and take a tour through there, what you'll discover as you look through the windows into labs is that the labs are built to work today, but they're built to work tomorrow. We have to assume when we build a new building that we're building a building for 50 years, or if you're Plum Hall, nearly 100. But the fact is that the people that follow us will not need the configurations that we need today. And so that facility was designed to be flexible and to allow the next generation of faculty and students to reposition benches, to reconfigure the laboratories to actually function. There's a lot of collaborative space in that building. All of our facilities are LEED certified. Of course, this is the first Ohio State LEED building here at the Ohio 4-H Center. But now this is standard practice, including in our renovations, to seek LEED certification. And so when you look at this great new building, it's accommodating our ag engineers and some of our USDA Ag Research Service partners, and really will be something that leads us to the future. This investment, which came from state funding, insurance settlements, and university and college sources, is another $15 million in round numbers. So continues to be a great investment. And then in addition, on the Worcester campus, you can imagine a tornado going through. There were two absolute givens in the outcome. Every roof was sliced up on the campus, and essentially every greenhouse suffered some form of damage. And so we had a whole set of greenhouses that serviced our horticulture and crop sciences colleagues that were damaged, and we've now reopened those Williams greenhouses. About a $5 million project in the aggregate. There's another couple $1 million being invested in additional greenhouse renovations, even as we speak, up at the campus. The Seacrest Arboretum, a living part of the campus, suffered extensive damage. And if you were to go there now with no mental picture of what it looked like before, you would see a lovely research and education space, substantial replanting. To me, some of you have heard me say this before, but to me, an arboretum is a really great metaphor for recovery and revitalization. You know, we suffered that damage of well over 1,000 trees that had to be removed, and we've put trees back in, and you're seeing that recovery before your eyes. One of the most recent additions through philanthropic support has been a health and wellness garden that we've just recently opened next to the new parking area. So that continues to be a great feature, just as the Chadwick Arboretum, which you're in the middle of here in this part of campus, is for us here in Columbus. Now, let's think to the future a little bit. Those are projects that have been completed. Just in this past year, we've seen essentially about $40 million in capital investments come to fruition. And these are all part of the facilities planning that the college has been doing for several years, which has really culminated in the last year in a plan for the next generation. And so as we're thinking about what we're going to do and how we prioritize it, just a few highlights for you. Here on the Columbus campus, huge focus on Waterman. We have a great living laboratory just west of this location on the other side of the highway. And then our facilities at Don Scott are bundled into this because a lot of our focus in this planning is around livestock agriculture. We actually have a contract in place, and we'll see design concepts. This will not be the carpet swatch and paint chip stage of the process. These are the early stages of planning. for a new multi-species livestock arena on the West Campus at Waterman, for changes in our beef facility, our equine facilities. We have a project currently in place with the James Cancer Center and private donors to look at classroom space that accommodates some of the work that they're doing in urban agriculture and gardening at the Waterman site. Likewise, up at Worcester, a lot going on. We actually have state capital funding in place to plan for a replacement for Thorne Hall. It's an iconic building, but it simply is not equipped to deal with today's science. And so we're looking at a building that would actually adjoin Selby Hall, that would allow us to accommodate the faculty, staff, and students from the Department of Entomology who are currently housed in Thorne Hall, but also bring in other partnerships. And the intent is for that building to actually contain learning space as well. And so, when we build new facilities from this point on, and this is an outcome of our planning process, the intent is to build academic buildings where we're really looking at the combination of needs and missions of the college. Another high priority is student housing at the Worcester campus. We have an apartment complex right next to ATI. I'll say more about ATI and its growth here a little bit later, but the fact is that this year we came close to having to turn away students from OSU housing at ATI. That's a great problem to have, folks. But it allowed us, along with our ongoing needs to house graduate students, because about 100 of our graduate students are located on the Worcester campus working with faculty there. It allowed us to leapfrog to the head of the line in facilities needs to talk to some private sector developers about the possibility of partnering with them to build new student housing that would accommodate these very different audiences. You've got the 2-year students from ATI, you've got grad students, some with families. We're going to have to be flexible in thinking about how we approach that, but I think there are some creative solutions. And so we turned to the Mansfield campus, where Steve Gavazzi and his team had just accomplished this kind of conversation, and now we're looking at how we might deal with our housing. That will allow us to remove the ancient housing. Those of you who know the Worcester campus know that just on the west side of the highway across from ATI, there's something that looks sort of like a prison with the fences missing. That's the original student housing. My youngest brother, who's an ATI grad, remembers being a resident advisor there, and he said it was pretty dismal when he was there in the late 70s. It's grown worse since. We actually are entering into a contract to remove that facility, and then that will jumpstart somewhere on the Worcester campus plans for constructing new student housing. We're working on animal facilities, part of our facilities planning, and I'll talk in a minute about our livestock operations team and their recommendations. But part of the plan is to actually look at how we combine what are generally 2 sets of herds and flocks into one that accomplishes the research and teaching mission on the Worcester campus. We've done it already with sheep. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I tweeted several pictures out that were taken by our ATI faculty of the work that our students were doing with what has been the research flock. Now they're working together with sheep, and we intend to accomplish that across the board with our livestock facility. That will require some thinking about our animal facilities. We're working on a project to complement the changes at the Seacrest Arboretum by converting what is now an operations building there into a welcome center for Seacrest. It will have multiple purposes. We can use it for teaching for ATI purposes when students come over to do some of the ornamental horticulture, but we'll have an opportunity to work on that over the coming year. We'd like to bring that project to fruition. We've had substantial philanthropic interest in helping with that, and we want to bring that to a close. That will require us also to work on a next priority item, which is the new farm operations location for operating our Worcester agricultural concerns. In this most recent state budget, we actually got $1.25 million from the state to engage in what's called College Credit Plus. For those of you who haven't been following Ohio education, we are focused on reducing the cost of college attendance and increasing the success of students coming to college. And one way to do that is to actually take some of our college courses into the high schools and allow students to gain dual credit toward high school and college graduation. One of the missing pieces has been anything to do with our industries, with the food system writ large, everything from environmental issues all the way to production and consumer issues. And so we pitched to the legislature, and they have supported funding to allow us to work to enter this market. Now, there are a lot of reasons to do this. One is the stated purpose, and that is to allow students to have access to college courses and gain college credit while still in high school. But I will tell you, and I'll come back to this, less than half of the students who graduate from our college were freshmen in our college. They have no idea what the career opportunities are. High school students do not understand the advantages they will gain for their career by studying in our college, and so we get them later in life. My motivation for being in this program is to do the good thing, and that is allow students to take college credit courses, but also to do some marketing. I want to take our brand into high schools. I want science teachers engaging in food science, in plant breeding, in animal nutrition, in water quality with our brand on it. So when students are at that point of making a decision about where they're going to go, they already know there are majors called this. You know, I'm the only person in the world, I think, who knew at the age of 11 there was a major called entomology. You know, I can't rely on everyone being just as nerdy as I am. And so we got to take another approach to this. So the other approach is we take our brand with our subject matter and our hints about the career opportunities into those high schools. Well, in order to accomplish that, you really need three things. You need a willing audience, and the audiences are out there. You need great teachers, and we've got those teachers, and a lot of people are really excited about the chance to expand to online learning and to really engage, and you need the technical ability to do it. And so we've actually, this is why I'm talking about this in a facilities slide, we've actually tackled this up at the ATI campus. We're retrofitting one of the rooms to really be able to use this as a high-quality distribution point for these programs. One of the things we've discovered is that the cost of the project is double what we expected. And I raise this point simply to say that as we see continued growth in our enrollments at ATI, and we see the opportunity to do some novel things from ATI, we're going to be constrained by the physical condition of the ATI buildings. Those buildings are 40 or so years old, and they're in bad condition. What happens when you go into a room like that and start making these changes is that today's code now forces you to do a whole bunch of other things that you didn't anticipate doing, and the cost becomes much more extensive. We're going to have to think creatively about that because the demand for what we do in those facilities is clearly there. This is part of our planning process. So, I think I spent a lot of time on this particular topic, but it's something that you've heard me talking about for the past couple of years. We've got really tangible outcomes that have emerged just in this past year since we last talked. And we've got great plans that are built on really comprehensive discussions for heading forward. Let me switch over to a second topic, and that is our Vice President's conversation on the future of extension. This has really been an invigorating discussion. Last year we were celebrating the centennial of extension nationwide. And a lot of that conversation, including here in Ohio, really focused on, okay, great, happy birthday to us, what's next? You know, is there a second century for Extension? What is our portfolio? How do we deliver our educational programming? So here at Ohio State, we engaged in a conversation that really took us back to almost an academic exercise. Our first step was to bring in teachers and learn about futuring. And Graham Cochran and Becky Nesbitt did a masterful job in leading this process along with a committee from across the college. We ended up with hundreds of people, inside and outside, commenting on what the future needs of our stakeholders might be. Who are our future stakeholders? You know, so we ask ourselves to not think about the constraints of what we look like today. Let's think from the perspective of what the needs are 30 years out. And it really changed the tone of the conversation. We've been reporting regularly. I keep people updated within the college in my monthly webinars to the college. We also have had a website. We've been engaged nationally with a lot of presentations. And what we've done in this conversation has people talking across the nation. They're asking, you know, how did you do this? What were your outcomes? What are you going to do next? And a lot of that really it remains to be developed. We've identified a number of scenarios that we've had folks evaluating, thinking about now, how do we connect this with what we aspire to do and be as an organization? The fact that we have done this also put us in the driver's seat when it came time to attracting candidates to replace Keith Smith. Since last year, Keith has stepped down as director of OSU Extension after 23 years in the driver's seat of that organization, 35 years within the college. He's now professor emeritus and still active, I would say. He's has an office over in Ag and Min and still is engaging in some leadership training. But the fact is that it was time to look for the next leader, and even though Greg Davis has done a masterful job in an interim role, we looked for candidates to get the next person in as soon as possible. This smiling face is Roger Rennekamp. Roger will join us in January as the new Associate Dean for Extension and Director of OSU Extension. Roger works for OSU, just not the OSU. He's currently at Oregon State University, that's OSU West, as opposed to OSU Central, Oklahoma State, and the OSU, the undisputed national champions. I can say that in this room. The people at Virginia Tech say, yeah, but not undefeated. And the people down in Dallas say, not so much undisputed either. But we'll let it ride, shall we? The fact is that Roger is a PhD alumnus of this college. He spent time in Kentucky and more recently at Oregon State. He's developed a tremendous portfolio and national reputation in planning and assessment in extension programming. A lot of expertise and experience in the 4-H portfolio. Most recently at Oregon State, he's had a lot of responsibilities for connecting with health outcomes and health issues across the state of Oregon, which has given him a great perspective at connecting with other colleges and other partners that might be beyond the partners that we historically have had. So we're looking forward to Roger joining us, and you'll all get a chance to meet him in due time. Okay, the ATI re-envisioning exercise. This is another one of our planning exercises. ATI, Agricultural Technical Institute, has a unique mission within the college and within the university. This is our 2-year degree program focused largely on the agricultural sciences and some related majors. The best way to ensure the continued growth of a unique organization is to make sure that it is connected to the full assets of the entire college. And so the ATI re-envisioning conversation has really focused on this notion of how to truly deeply understand the mission of that organization, which is the nation's leading producer of 2-year degrees in food and agriculture. So in our college, in this university, in this state, we have the leading position in providing two-year degrees. We need to make sure that we're true to that mission, that we're true to the student engagement and faculty connections that characterize the way we do that teaching. But we also need to ensure that we're using the full assets of the college and university in order to support that unique mission. And so that's what this conversation has been all about. We're at the point right now we've had a team working on implementation recommendations. Their recommendations are being edited, and so we expect actually in very short order to begin to step into some of those implementation items. Livestock management is another one of the planning exercises that we've done. I've referred to it in a couple of places with regards to facilities and other sorts of things, but it basically encompasses all of our locations here in Columbus. It's Don Scott Field, it's the Waterman Farm, it's our outlying research and extension centers, it's our Worcester presence, both with OARDC and ATI. We have multiple sets of animals for multiple reasons, and the charge to this group was to say, how do we aggregate the way we think about these? Let's treat them again as a college asset with a lot of different demands. And so it's a demand-driven kind of approach. What do we need to do with these animals? And then from there, you figure out how you manage that to deliver for those needs. And so a lot of changes were recommended by this group. Part of them are new facilities, part of them are consolidations of operations, part of them are new tools for how we work with these things. And this conversation has actually popped up a number of intriguing different discussions and potential partners. For example, we're talking to Ohio State University Dining Services with regard to our livestock portfolio. We're actually exploring what would be for Ohio State a unique public-private enterprise that would allow us to do some different things with our livestock portfolio. We're looking at cross-college partnerships, and we're looking at how we do more education research integration in the way that we use these assets. So lots of great opportunities here that we're beginning to act on. And then the fifth planning group that I would mention is the Worcester Campus Integration Planning Group. Now, the Worcester campus, it's not as if it's in 10 different places. It is in Worcester, and it is a contiguous area. But historically, we've had several different approaches to leadership and management within that campus because of the unique missions. And so Dave Benfield took on looking at this question and assembled a team that has given us a set of recommendations. We're just about to release those publicly. We've got the final draft here in the last several weeks, and we're about to put that out publicly. But they looked at things from fleet to IT to fiscal issues, facilities, management, the libraries, planning and renovation, hospitality, even the staff councils of the OARDC and ATI operations at Worcester were part of this conversation. So we've been trying to look holistically at how we actually manage the campus to fully deliver on the potential of research and education that takes place there. Now, I've talked about these 5 planning elements. Planning, in my mind, is really designed to support the excellence of our faculty, staff, and students. You don't do it in a vacuum. Inclusive planning drives strategy, vision, informed decision, and impactful implementation. And so we're at this point where we're using the understanding and knowledge base, the conversations among our people across the system to actually make decisions and to begin to conduct that implementation. And I think you've seen at least a few snapshots here of some of the elements. Now, I want to use my remaining time here this morning to just take you through a few highlights of the last year. If you'll allow me, I'll begin with students, which I would argue are the single most important product that we deliver. Our undergraduate enrollments in Columbus and Worcester, and I've chosen a benchmark of 2012. There's nothing magic about this except that's when I arrived. Now, I'm not using 2012 to suggest that I did this stuff. It's just, for me, looking at this particular historical perspective to see what our trajectories look like. Anything I report that is good, it's the faculty and staff that are doing it. Anything I report that's gone south, you can blame me. But the good stuff is done because our faculty and staff are absolutely committed to the success of this enterprise. Undergraduate enrollments, since 2012, our undergraduate numbers in the college have increased 16%. That's a very positive trajectory. That is an environment, folks, think about two really important constraints. First of all, the number of high school graduates in Ohio peaked. We're on the way down in terms of potential student population, and our student numbers are on the way up. And Ohio State, as an institution, has remained committed to a level enrollment. So what that means is that we're going up, somebody else is going down a little bit in order to accommodate us going up. That means students are choosing our majors as opposed to all of the other hundreds of majors that they could choose across campus. So I see these as really positive. Now that 16% increase, it's up in all sectors. The real leaders are the School of Environment and Natural Resources and their programs, up 29% in enrollment in that period of time. And ATI, our two-year program, is up 23% over that three-year period. 2012, the year I arrived, was the historic low point for ATI enrollment over the past decade plus. And we have turned the corner and we're up nearly a quarter in student enrollment. I think that speaks to the power of offering that other approach to coming into Ohio State, both the location, the open access of that campus, and offering the two-year degree as an alternative. Our students that have joined us are more diverse than they were in 2012, and they're more prepared for college than they were in 2012, as evidenced by their ACT scores and high school attainment. Now, I said this earlier, the majority of graduates in our college were not freshmen in our college. But even having said that, if you just look, even just compared to last year, the number of new first-year students enrolling directly in our college, they can enroll and be undecided. And in fact, the undecideds are our most fertile recruiting ground for students that are admitted to Ohio State. Because, they take one of our classes or they hang out with, I was at an event last night and a very accomplished young man was at our table. He's in engineering presently, but I could sense in his voice that he wasn't really truly bought into this. And as we talked at the table, and the dean of engineering was nowhere to be found, so it was freedom to operate. As we talked at the table, I discovered that he actually is in the Sustains Learning community, which is, he's surrounded by our students. And so we started talking about what he really wants to do. I said, you can do that in the food system. And there will be a long line of people waiting to hire you when you're done. So he has my card. I expect to get an email from him pretty soon. But the fact is, we're really successful at getting those kids who come in undecided, even kids who come into other majors. You can be a microbiologist in our college. We do that in food science. We do it in rumen biology. We do a whole bunch of stuff. But just since last year, we've increased our freshmen directly enrolling by 22%. So the word is starting to get out. There's a lag time, but the word is starting to get out about what we have to offer, the value we have to offer. And during 2014-2015 academic year, we actually conferred 668 undergraduate degrees here at Ohio State. We're not the College of Arts and Sciences, but That is a very healthy number among our peers nationally graduating in food and ag systems. Now, we focus on the classroom and beyond. You've heard me talk about this backdrop. That's not Columbus, in case you hadn't noticed, but the fact is that we have some of the best classroom offerings in the nation in our subject matter, but we do the best job in the nation in things outside the classroom. We have internship requirements for our students. We ask our students to minor as well as major while they're here. We send students internationally at double the rate of the rest of the university. Our students engage in service learning. They're part of not only clubs and organizations here in the college, but clubs and organizations among the 1,300 opportunities across the university. And it's really that growth outside the college that adds to the value. The one thing, I tell this to students all the time, the one thing you have in common with all your peers is a diploma. How do you set yourself apart? How do you make your diploma rise above the others? And it's the things you do outside the class. We had actually just in this room, Adam, where are you? I saw you here someplace. Adam Cahill, another Hardin County boy, I might add. Just last week, his team ran 3 career fairs, 2 here and 1 up at Worcester at ATI in the Schisler Conference Center. We had 169 companies in the aggregate at those career fairs. That's an increase over last year of a third. 32% more companies came this year than a year ago to those career fairs. And we had 800 students come to our career fairs. They have to swipe their ID card as they come in, so we can take attendance and figure out who's here. 800 students, that's an increase of 18% over last year. What the employers tell us is this is one of the places they want to come to look for people to join their company, first as interns and then as employees. What I tell the employers is the dirty little secret. I don't really care about training their employees. Pretty ugly thing for a dean to say, huh? I'm training the people that are going to take their jobs. I want to train the leaders, the entrepreneurs, the innovators of the next generation. Yep, they'll start as employees, but they're going to lead those companies and they're going to start new companies. That's what we're aiming for here. And so great strides in our undergraduate population. Just a word about our graduate students. About 3.5% increase over that 2012 to 2015 period, more modest than the undergrads. Undergraduate and graduate recruitment and attainment are very different beasts. Undergraduate students are attracted to the institution. Graduate students come to professors. And so as I'll talk about some of our work, although I'm seeing how many slides I have left, I'll talk fast about our work in the discovery themes a little bit later. As we add additional faculty through those discovery theme areas, we anticipate that graduate enrollment will increase. Well, OSU Extension, our other teaching and learning mission, continues to reach new audiences and have national impact. Of course, I mentioned earlier that last year we celebrated the centennial. The band helped us celebrate that centennial, in fact. And we continue to see new opportunities both across the university and across Ohio. 4-H, of course, remains a national leader here in Ohio. Our nearly 220,000 youth that are touched by the 4-H programs here in Ohio, with the collaboration and cooperation of about 20,000 adult volunteers to extend our reach, is really a national model. We've talked a lot about STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Some great opportunities there. Speaking of national recognition, this evening in Washington, D.C., Dr. Clarence Cunningham will become the next Buckeye to be inducted into the National 4-H Hall of Fame. We've got this little thing called homecoming. I can't believe the National 4-H Council didn't check with us here to find out if this was a convenient evening or not. But we've got a number of folks from our board that I hope will be able to join Clarence and Jane in celebrating Clarence's success. This is an example of some real opportunities for learning that we had. Some things, there are a lot of unexpected opportunities for learning in 4-H. This is a shot I took at the Union County Fair back in June. With the threat of high-path avian influenza, Ohio made the decision to not permit poultry exhibits at the county fairs and the state fair here in Ohio. A real blow. A lot of 4-H projects that started. In fact, the Paulding County Fair was the very next week, the first fair in Ohio. About 9,000 Ohio 4-Hers are in 4-H projects in a year, and there was much hand-wringing. What shall we do? Well, the prohibition on exhibition didn't prohibit the projects, and so the projects went on. Most of the kids stuck with them, and our team of consummate professionals dug deep to figure out what are the learning opportunities. And so as I went from county fair to county fair this summer, what I saw were some incredible programs. Poultry showmanship using stuffed birds. Sounds silly, but the kids got into it, and they really learned a lot about this. One county I visited had actually had 4-H poultry project members draw out of a hat research topics. And their fair exhibit was to do a poster on a research topic and present it to the judges. You talk about a learning opportunity. And then some of them were sort of travelogues of my project through time, and so great photo documentation. As I went around to fairs and looked at these exhibits, place after place, people were saying, well, I hope the birds are back next week, but I hope they bring these posters too. I really learned a lot about this. And so, sometimes out of what appears to be a really problematic situation, you actually get some incredible learning opportunities. And I think this characterizes exactly what 4-H and OSU Extension is all about. A year ago, we were talking about water quality and Field to Faucet, the initiative that I announced a year ago, September 2014. We did have another difficult year with harmful algal blooms. We did not have water shutdowns along Lake Erie this year, which was very good. Part of that was due to some of the impacts of investments that we and Ohio made in water quality issues. We've had some interesting new things emerge. The Ohio River experienced an extensive harmful algal bloom that was unprecedented, where it started up near the West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio border, and now extends all the way down into Kentucky, and things have been shut down in terms of recreational use of the Ohio River. So there are a lot of challenges that remain. But I would report to you that our $1 million, when we laid this out and started talking to people, that we intended to invest in multidisciplinary, multi-institutional, collaborative projects that focused on near-term deliverables, problem solving. A lot of people took notice, including the state of Ohio. They had promised $2 million, and Chancellor Carey of the Board of Regents, now the Department of Higher Education, actually asked me if we would partner with Toledo to lead the investment of their $2 million. We've done that. Ohio Soy, Ohio Corn and Wheat, Beck's Hybrids, Ohio Farm Bureau have all stepped in with financial support for this. We have a lot of terrific projects going on. In fact, 23 projects involving 8 Ohio universities and 60-some faculty across those 8 universities. And it's set up an unprecedented partnership across these institutions. The state of Ohio has just invested an additional $2 million, and in fact, the call for proposals for that second round of funding from the state will go out just in the next few days. And so we look to see some real impacts and outcomes from this. From an extension perspective, because it's a fine line between research activity and actually delivering those answers through extension. The extension impacts of this, at about the same time as we were announcing Field to Faucet, the state implemented legislation that required farmers and commercial applicators of fertilizer to be certified, similar to the way we certify folks who are going to use various pesticides. Okay, certification is great, but to be certified, somebody has to educate. And so they turned to OSU Extension, and our team put together a great curriculum, worked with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and over the course of the winter, we educated 6,600 Ohio farmers and commercial applicators who now have certification. Our work is not done yet. We estimate we only got about a third of the individuals that will need that certification over a 3-year period. So we've got a lot ahead of us here. But I think it just continues to illustrate the way Extension leaps into the breach. Food security is another big issue, and this is I love this concept, not because of what it is, but because of how we tackle it. Let me just quickly set the stage. This is an extraordinary economy for agriculture here in Ohio. The food system, from all that it takes to get seed in the ground to get food on the table, is an extraordinary system, high value, high impact to the state's economy. And yet, Ohio consistently is among the very worst states in terms of food security. 1 in 6 Ohioans did not know at some point last year where their meal was coming from. If you put it, what does that statistic mean? I don't know, 1 in 6. Well, tables of 6, one of you. That's the kind of face on this. But let me put a different face, and some of you have heard this. I first used this, I had the chance to give the commencement address this summer here at Ohio State. And I was talking about this and used this illustration. We all know Ohio Stadium. If you just took the children in Ohio who were food insecure last year, you would fill that stadium 6 times and still have a line outside. That is untenable, folks. It is untenable. We have to address that in a place with this kind of food system riches. We cannot be getting worse and worse and worse at this. This is a role for our college to help mobilize the university to really make something happen, and Extension is at the forefront. We're already doing programs on food security across the state. Our Family and Consumer Science team is engaged in nutrition, in financial planning, in family resilience, all things that are at the heart of food security. This is a community and economic development opportunity. There are investment opportunities. There are new businesses that can stand up in this area. This is an ag and natural resources opportunity. We have to look at new ways to produce, at building new markets. This is a 4-H opportunity because just like hybrid corn 100+ years ago in Clark County, when A.B. Graham said, we're going to create these corn club thingies to teach the unlearning adults by talking to their young people, we need to do that with food security. We need to have the next generation growing up understanding how they're part of the solution to this, not blind to the fact that their neighbors are struggling because they don't have enough to eat. And so I see just an incredible program. It's a metro program, it's a rural program. This is a picture from Vinton County. Travis West, our educator there, hosted President Drake and the Buckeye Bus on one of their tours this summer. We had students there working with the local school district, with community volunteers, with 4-H'ers, to work on a community garden, just an awareness opportunity of understanding this. So Extension, just like our resident instruction group portfolio, I would argue, is alive, well, and thriving. Now, I've mentioned the discovery themes here today. Let me just shift quickly to the research concept, because research and discovery, R&D, you usually think research and development. I say R&D is research and discovery because I like that word discovery. It's the new knowledge that we're unearthing. That is at the heart of everything I've talked about so far. You don't educate if you don't have new ideas. I actually used this metaphor in my commencement speech as well. Every college and university in the world uses books to teach. But only at a handful of those colleges and universities do the professors write the books. Ohio State is one of those places where we write the book, and we do it because of our investment in research and development. And we've had a strong, strong history of leadership in this college. In fact, we're at a transition point. My colleague Steve Slack, who has been at the helm of our research enterprise for 16 years, will step down from that role at the end of 2015. So we're about to start a national search for the next Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Education. Dave Benfield, who has been the Associate Director at OARDC, will step into the role of Associate Vice President at the end of the year, responsible for management of the Worcester campus and leadership of our other campus and our other outlying centers. And so, always transition, always things happening. But I really think that with the underpinning that Steve and his team have given us, that we won't miss a beat in this transition. One of the opportunities that we have is the university's investment in discovery themes. These are the 8 themes that are currently funded. And by funded, what I mean is the university has committed to investing money into faculty salaries in perpetuity. So they're enabling us to match dollars one for one to add faculty in these areas. So there are 8 listed here. Highlighted in red are the 6 in which our college is actively engaged. We've not figured out how to be involved in the brain injury discovery theme, and the arts and humanities discovery theme is just emerging. I actually think there's a way that we could be engaged in that. For example, we've got folks in a couple of our units that are very much aligned with humanities research, because there's a lot of social science components that are very, very important in the whole food system. And so we'll have our eyes on that sort of thing. So we're involved in 6 of these, and in fact, we lead 3 of them. And so the discovery themes were written for us. These are in our wheelhouse, and we are in the process of recruiting 17 new faculty in the first wave of hires. We're going to add a lot of intellectual capacity as we move forward. Now, I could talk about a lot of different projects. We could talk about foods that cure or prevent cancer. We could talk about new novel materials. We could talk about the science of sustainability. We could talk about emerging diseases, but let me just give you one vignette. So I think you can see what we're looking at here. Some of you have noticed this, that this is, for those of you who can't quite figure this out, this is a cornfield. One of the areas of investment that Ohio State has highlighted is an investment in precision agriculture. Now, new equipment, new technologies to run that equipment are not emerging so that we can put college logos in cornfields. But imagine, if you will, equipment that allows past performance in that field, soil type, moisture holding capabilities, soil test for nutrients, topography, to actually inform putting the right seed in the right place. And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a partnership of equipment and the technologies to drive that equipment, the underlying big data of what yields have looked like in the past. What do we know about climate? What do we know about the attributes of, so you could imagine a place where you've got a field that is in the same season a little droughty in one area and a little wet in the other area. So you can now load up a corn planter with seeds that do well in those 2 different areas, and your data will actually inform your equipment about where to put the right seed, trying to maximize the yield within that field. This sort of technology will allow us to look at issues of water quality. They'll allow us to look at issues of efficiency. It's not just big-scale production. You know, our experts see this changing the face of how we do business. At Farm Science Review just a few weeks ago, we actually had a Farm for the Future plot where we talked about the possibility that instead of you sitting out there till you get tired of riding, because you're not driving anymore, folks, you're just riding, till you get, it's no longer on you. If we could have smaller vehicles going 24/7, you might actually see a very different portfolio of how we do farming in the future. This technology, these data, can help manage the other end of the food system chain. You know, as food banks think about where to source produce so that they can get now fresh produce. The Mid-Ohio Food Bank, over 50% now of the food they serve is fresh produce. That is an incredible change in 10 years. It changes the nutritional outcomes, but it also changes the need for data to understand where that produce is and how to load it on trucks and get it to where it needs to be in a timely fashion. So, you know, data analytics, one of those key discovery themes, has made a commitment to the data analytics of the food system and how we're working. While the discovery themes are enabling our college to grow our faculty in specific areas, we also have a lot of other needs in the college, and so we're looking at how we're keeping a close eye on how we grow our faculty writ large. Just to give you a sense, since this time last year, our college has hired 33 new faculty. And those 33 new faculty are intellectually diverse. They bring gender, ethnic, cultural diversity as well. Half of those 33 contribute directly to those diversity goals. Of the 33, 17, in addition to the 33, we have on the drawing board 17 more positions that are advertised or about to be advertised from the discovery themes. And we have 18 additional non-discovery theme positions that are being advertised, or we're negotiating with candidates, or they're in the approval process. And so we continue to see a revitalization, a renovation of our faculty intellect. And I really think that this is what takes us forward to the future. Now, trying to wrap up here, a college only succeeds in the context of the success of the university around us. You know, the Vision 2020 is an initiative of President Drake, who's now been on the job for a year plus, about a year and a quarter. Now, it's funny because he's an ophthalmologist by training, and so the 2020 vision thing, he's taken a few pokes for that, but you know, there's some intent to that. But the 2020 is where I want you to focus. The sesquicentennial of the university, Ohio State's 150th birthday. But I would remind you that it's also our 150th birthday because we were the founding college of the Ohio State University. And so as we look to that, it's very important to me to keep in mind what the president and senior leadership of the university are thinking about in terms of directions. He has put a focus particularly on access, affordability, and excellence. He's focused on our community engagement, and he's focused on diversity and inclusion. Now, I've just given you examples. We just talked about what we've done with our faculty in terms of diversity and inclusion. Our student body is a more diverse student body. We have work to do, but we're making strides in the right direction. I talked to you about community engagement. He used as his single example of how we would accomplish more community engagement the issue of food security. So what we're talking about, what research and teaching will do, where Extension has already taken leadership in food security issues, are directly aligned with the goals of the university. That's why I say we can play the leading role within the university. And so we've aligned very closely with those goals and aligned very closely with the notion of access and affordability. Our ATI campus is an open enrollment campus. We're at a 29 ACT as the average for entry into the Columbus campus. That is not open enrollment. That excludes a lot of people, and a lot of your neighbors talk to me, and they don't actually, their first comment is not to talk about being priced out of Ohio State. You know, they're worried about finances, but they're not talking about being priced out. They're talking about being tested out. That's why a campus like ATI is so fundamentally important, because it offers access to the entire power of an Ohio State degree through that campus. That's why we invest so much time in thinking about that element of our curriculum. You know, we're not ignoring our four-year degrees, our graduate degrees, but this is a real opportunity for us as a college. We hold the keys to student success, to the ability of students anywhere in Ohio to get an education. And so as we looked at the president's focus on access and affordability, we feel like we're doing great work on access. We looked at affordability. Just a month ago, we celebrated $2.1 million in scholarships awarded by the college and its academic units this year. That's a really great number. But our bachelor's students graduate with $28,000 in debt. Our ATI students, our two-year degree students, graduate with $17,000 in debt. And so we got work to do still in affordability. And so at the Farm Science Review, I actually announced that the college will commit an additional $1 million next year, over and above that $2.1 million base, to scholarships for students in our college. Now that's a one-time commitment, and every one-time commitment helps. Don't get me wrong, but I want to sustain that. I want to make that the new normal, and I need your help to do that. It's been an incredible year. I hope you would agree from listening to my, yes, more than an hour, but less than last year presentation. The fact is that, you know, I've just really touched the tip of the iceberg here. There's so much more that I simply can't explain to you in a short period of time. A lot of it's not very sexy stuff. It's operational things. But the idea behind operational change is that it makes the cool things possible. It makes the other elements something that we can achieve. And so, you know, from my perch, we have to look at this as a system and figure out how you move all the parts at once in order to really try to accomplish this change. That's not me. I told you at the start, I reminded you partway through when I said I'm setting my start date as the benchmark. Yeah, this isn't me, folks. This is the people in the college, and it's you. We're partners in this. You've been partners in a lot of ways, but I'm calling on you to continue to be partners. If we're going to achieve all of the promise that we have ahead of us, it's going to take all of us pulling oars in the same direction. You know, I need your feedback. That's why our advisory committees are gathered here today. We need an assessment. Are we on the right track? Are we missing something? Are we overlooking things that we ought to be thinking about? I need your creativity. We're not going to do business the same way we have. You would not be in business if you were doing business the same way. You shouldn't expect us to do business the same way. We have to stick to our principles, define our goals, but we have to think of new ways to accomplish that, and we need your help. We need your energy and enthusiasm, whether it's advocating for funding, whether it is encouraging students to enroll in our college, whether it's agreeing to allow our extension educators to use your facility or your property for part of their educational work. We need your energy, we need your enthusiasm, and we continue to need your financial support. There are a lot of people in this room that have been extraordinarily generous, that help us meet those scholarship goals, that have supported research, that are helping extension education programs, but we continue to need that as we go toward the finish line. We're committed to excellence, folks. We're absolutely committed to excellence. And I'm grateful that you're along with us for the ride. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.